everyone, I wanted to be informed and I listened to the audiobook version of It Ends With Us and then I watched the movie. I have a lot to say about this. In this video, I'm specifically going to talk about the rooftop scene, the secret script changes, and their impact on the story. This is going to lead to a discussion about triangulation that can happen in the workplace. I think if you have ever felt pushed aside or taken advantage of at work, you will identify with the topics covered in this video. However, before we begin, here is the intro. Welcome to Revealing the Narc. Join me as I highlight narcissistic traits in celebrities and public figures. Everything here is in my opinion and not professional advice. If you enjoy the analysis, please like and subscribe. Okay, everyone, let's get into this. I want to mention that I am entering this unbiased about Blake's and Justin's history. I really don't know much about them, but now I know a lot about the book, the movie, and the differences between the two. I entered this trying to be completely fair and completely unbiased. There are allegations that Blake Lively didn't read the book, and this strikes me as a red flag. I think as a result of this, her portrayal of the main character, Lily Bloom, does not ring true. So this is now going to be a spoiler alert. I'm just going to give a quick summary of what the story is about. I won't give away any endings, but I think this is just enough information to understand exactly what these workplace dynamics are that happen during production of this movie. Okay, so spoiler alert. It Ends With Us follows Lily Bloom, a young woman who falls for Ryle Kincaid, a charming and successful neurosurgeon with a strict no relationships rule. Their romance begins as passionate and idealistic, but over time, Ryle's violent temper emerges, mirroring the abuse that Lily witnessed happen between her mother and her father in her childhood. Lily had decided early on that she would never end up in the same situation as her mother, the victim of DV. But this story shows that it can happen to anyone. In my opinion, this is the most important point of this movie, that any one of us are susceptible to ending up in a relationship full of DV. The way Lily is portrayed in the movie shapes the entire message of the story. The novel is deeply emotional, painful, and it's a realistic portrayal of DV and survival. In interviews that I've watched with Blake, the way she described how she went into character with Lily is incredibly superficial. And I think this really impacts the way she acts in the movie, and it demonstrates to me that she really didn't read the book, allegedly. I will do a future video about this, about the differences between Lily and the book and the movie. But in this video, there's a specific scene I want to talk about, and it occurs on the rooftop. After the film had wrapped, Lively confirmed that Ryan Reynolds modified the script, and it came as a surprise to both Justin, who is the director and rights owner of the movie and who plays Ryle Kincaid, and the screenwriter Christy Hall. I'm going to read you the excerpt from the book, and then I'm going to show you the video clip from the movie just to show you the differences between the two. Here's the beginning of the passage from the book. He lifts his chin a little and nudges his head toward me. Will you please get down from there, Lily? It isn't until he says this that I notice his posture. He's standing straight up now, rigid even, almost as if he's nervous I'm going to fall. I'm not. The ledge is at least a foot wide, and I'm mostly on the roof side. I could easily catch myself before I fell, not to mention I've got the wind in my favor. I glanced down at my legs and then back up at him. No thanks, I'm quite comfortable where I am. He turns a little, like he can't look straight at me. Please get down. It's more of a demand now, despite his use of the word please. The passage ends there. So now let's watch what happens in the movie clip. There's a line specifically credited to Ryan Reynolds, and that's the line when Ryle says something about the cherry on top. So let's have a look.
Will you please get down from there?
I'm good, thanks.
He's making me nervous sitting so close to the edge. Please? Cherry on top?
I'm okay. I once read that maraschino cherries stay in your stomach for like 7 years. Will cause cancer, I forget which.
So, does this line add anything to the story? It doesn't. And in fact, I think it negatively impacts the story, but I'll get into that in a minute. The rooftop scene is crucial because it establishes Lily and Ryle's dynamic and it foreshadows their future relationship. The novel's version of this scene sets the stage for Ryle's charm, his no relationships rules, and the subtle red flags that later unfold. This cherry on top line, it feels random and out of place in a story that's about DV and survival. It's a quirky addition and it doesn't deepen the character's connection or foreshadow anything significant about their relationship. The original dialogue in the book was more impactful, in my opinion. And why was this changed? Is there a personal agenda behind it? I will address this question because I believe there is. Could this have been a power play by Lively and Reynolds? I think so. The fact that Ryan, who had no official role in the film's creative team, was allowed to rewrite parts of the script without informing the screenwriter suggests an element of control and influence rather than an actual improvement to the story. There are allegations that Blake wanted creative control over the film, and I think this was a way to assert her influence. Ryan stepping in to rewrite a pivotal scene without the knowledge of the screenwriter or director shows that his involvement wasn't about storytelling, it was about power. It sets a precedent. If Blake and Ryan could make changes to the script without oversight, they essentially overrode the professionals involved in the adaptation. This move highlights the lack of respect for the original creative team, who were reportedly unaware of the rewrites. If they altered this scene, what else did they change? And was their watering down of the DV part of their influence? And this is something that I agree. I feel there was a very much watering down of the story in the movie compared with the book. In my opinion, this added line doesn't enhance the film or Lily and Ryle's relationship. It's extra fluff. I actually think it takes away from their relationship. It feels maybe like it's an inside joke or an attempt to leave a personal mark rather than a meaningful addition. Okay, so now let's talk about what impact adding this line about the maraschino cherry does to the characters in the book and the movie. In Colleen Hoover's novel, Ryle is depicted as charming but dominant, with a strong presence, and that foreshadows his later controlling behavior. In the book's version of this scene, he does not merely lose control of the situation, nor does Lily actively dismiss his concerns in such a flippant way. By making Ryle's concerns seem silly, the film softens his authority and alters the power balance between them. In the film, Lily is dangerously close to the edge of the rooftop, and it makes Ryle nervous. Ryle asks her to move away from the ledge, and Lily does not comply. But instead of asserting himself, he adds the line, "Pretty please," with a cherry on top in almost a playful tone. Lily laughs off his concern and then shifts the conversation to maraschino cherries, digestion, and whether they cause cancer, turning the moment from a serious concern into quirky banter. So I'm going to put myself in this situation. When I was reading the audiobook, as soon as Ryle made that demand, I had goosebumps. I knew where the book was going. You don't have that in the movie because of this playful comment, "Pretty please," with a cherry on top. There's no red flag here. All it is concern. Whereas in the book, you can tell that perhaps he has a controlling personality. Let me know what you think about this and if you see this as well. So, what is the purpose of this exchange? And this is where I think you'll see why adding this line really impacted the movie negatively. In my opinion, it weakens Ryle's alpha male persona. The original Ryle is dominant, confident, and assertive. His protective nature is a double edged sword, later turning into jealousy and control as the relationship deteriorates. In the film, making him almost beg by saying pretty please with a cherry on top, undermines his natural confidence, making him less of a masculine, assertive figure. And instead of setting a boundary and insisting that Lily move, he joins her, which softens his leadership role in the relationship. It also gives Lily the upper hand from the start. Lily gradually realizes Ryle's red flags over time, but in the film, this scene subtly shifts their power dynamic immediately. By ignoring his concern, laughing off his plea, and redirecting the conversation to cherries, Lily asserts dominance in their very first meeting. And this is a major deviation from how their dynamic was originally written. It undermines the central theme of the book, where Ryle initially seems perfect and in control, and only to reveal his darker tendencies later. This line also changes the tone from serious to quirky. In the book, this scene sets up the push and pull dynamic between Ryle and Lily, where he is irresistibly charming but has controlling tendencies. By injecting this quirky humor about maraschino cherries, the film shifts the tone from serious to whimsical, making it seem like a romantic comedy moment instead of a deep character introduction. So ultimately, I believe that making Baldoni deliver this line slightly emasculates his character. He seems less commanding. His inability to get Lily to move immediately reduces his control over the situation. The cherry banter shifts the tone from a tense, emotionally charged moment to lighthearted small talk. And this matters because Ryle starts out as the ideal guy before his natural tendencies are revealed. Softening him too early makes his later DV behaviors seem more out of character or less intense. This change makes it seem like Lily is more dominant, and it alters the power dynamics that drive the book's emotional weight. It makes Ryle appear less powerful. I think there are two things happening with the insertion of this line. The first one is what we just talked about. It really takes away from the story, it emasculates Ryle's character, it gets rid of that red flag that you feel from the beginning with this commanding nature, and it gives Lily power. So it negatively impacts the story. The other thing that's interesting is that this scene was filmed early. So I think what was happening is really a power play and the pushing of boundaries. It's almost like testing the waters. I have to tell you, I don't know much about the movie industry and how movies are made. And it was publicly known that both Baldoni and Christy Hall had no idea that this line was inserted by Ryan Reynolds. So that got me thinking, how is that possible? How could a line be said and nobody recognized that it wasn't part of the original script? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through how script changes normally work. In a standard film production, script changes follow a structured approval process. The screenwriter drafts and finalizes the script, and in this case, Christy Hall wrote the original script. The director approves and discusses necessary changes. Justin Baldoni, as the director, would have worked with Hall to ensure the adaptation aligned with his vision. Producers then review the script. Major producers, which could include Lively, would typically have input but not overridden the screenwriter and the director. The actors receive scripts and they discuss the lines. If there are concerns or suggestions, they usually collaborate with the director and writer to make these adjustments. And finally, there's approval before filming. Any last-minute script changes are to be approved by the director and sent to all involved. So how did this happen in It Ends With Us? Blake and Brian bypassed Christy Hall, the screenwriter. Hall was completely unaware that the rooftop scene had been rewritten. She assumed that any small dialogue changes were just natural to how the characters were speaking to each other. And as a result, she didn't expect to get an updated script. So what this means that instead of going through Hall, the changes were slipped into the production process without official approval. So the key issue is, why was Hall, the official screenwriter, left out of the loop? The next thing that happens is that Baldoni was given the new lines without knowing they were rewritten by Reynolds. He likely received the new script on set and assumed it was a standard revision. He did not question the changes at the time, likely believing they were approved by the writing team or part of minor adjustments. It wasn't until Blake publicly revealed Ryan's involvement that Baldoni realized he had been kept out of the decision making process. And this is a major issue, right? How was the script changed and handed to the lead actor and director without his knowledge? The director's authority was bypassed. In a normal production, Baldoni, as the director, would have the final say on script changes before they were implemented. Instead, Lively took creative control, allowing Reynolds to rewrite scenes without checking with the director. This immediately undermines Baldoni's authority as both the director and co star because he was expected to act out a version of the scene that he did not authorize. So, this action mirrors narcissistic testing the waters behavior. Narcissists in a workplace or collaborative environments often start by making small, seemingly harmless changes to test how much control they exert. If no one pushes back, they escalate their influence over time. The cherry on top line could have been a low stakes test to see whether Baldoni or others would react negatively. So, to summarize how this could look in the workplace, step one, small test of power. And in this example, it was rewriting the rooftop scene behind the screenwriter's and director's back. Step two, undermining the authority figure, giving the new script to Baldoni without informing him of the changes. Step three, bringing in the third party influence. We know that later there's triangulation that occurs with Ryan and Taylor Swift to validate Lively's choices. I'm not covering that in this video, but I may cover it in a future video. And step four, executing a power grab, commissioning a separate film edit to bypass the director completely. And we know that this is what ends up happening. It ends up that Lively creates a separate film edit, and this is the one that we see on Netflix now. The collaborative process during production of this movie was completely broken down. Lively and Reynolds took control of script changes, production, and editing, sidelining the official creative team. This wasn't just about creative input, it was about power and control. Lively's actions mirror how narcissists in leadership roles slowly dismantle authority structures, making it difficult for others to push back once they've established control. So I'm going to end this video with a fictional story that's going to take everything we just talked about and summarize it. That way you can see if it applies to any situation you may have been in. The story is titled The Office Power Shift. Sophie had been with Evermore Marketing for 5 years. She wasn't the boss, but she had built the company's most successful campaigns, trained new hires, and had earned the trust of her director, James, who valued her creativity and leadership. Then came Lena. Lena was brought in as the new senior brand strategist. She had an impressive resume and a confident, commanding presence. Everyone in the office knew she had a close friendship with one of the company's executives, which gave her a level of influence most employees didn't have. At first, Sophie welcomed her. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? But something was off. A few weeks in, Sophie and James were finalizing a big client pitch, one that could land their agency a six-figure deal. Sophie had written the proposal from scratch, and James was set to present it. The day before the meeting, Lena walked into Sophie's office with a last-minute revision. "I made some small tweaks to your presentation," she said casually, handing over a thick stack of papers. Sophie frowned. "James already approved the final version. Did he ask for these changes?" Lena smiled, but didn't answer directly. "I just ran it by Mark downstairs," referring to the executive that she was close with. "He thought these edits would make it stronger." Mark wasn't technically part of their project team, but his approval carried weight. Sophie knew that if she rejected the changes, it would seem like she was pushing back against upper management. Sophie scanned the revisions. They weren't terrible, but they changed the core of the proposal, removing sections she had carefully crafted and adding irrelevant industry buzzwords. James was out of the office, and he had no idea these changes were happening. Sophie had two choices: stand her ground and risk appearing difficult, or go along with it and let Lena's influence take over. She hesitated and chose option two. The next morning, James arrived early, expecting to rehearse his version of the pitch. James flipped through it, eyebrows furrowing. He said, "Who changed this?" Before Sophie could answer, Lena waltzed in. "Oh, I did. I thought it made the message more engaging." Mark agreed. She said this so confidently that it left no room for pushback. James paused. Sophie watched closely. Would he correct her? Would he push back? He sighed. All right, let's just roll with it. And just like that, Lena won. Sophie saw it clear as day. James had been backed into a corner. If he refused the changes now, he wasn't just challenging Lena, he was challenging Mark. Over the next few weeks, Lena slowly took over more and more. She stopped going through James for approvals. Instead, she ran things by Mark, who always sided with her. She revised projects at the last minute, giving people no time to push back. She dropped Mark's name in conversations, making everyone feel like her opinion carried more weight than theirs. Sophie realized what was happening. This wasn't collaboration, it was a takeover. And it was all textbook triangulation. Lena positioned herself between Sophie and James, making it seem like she had executive backing. She forced decisions through upper management, making it impossible for James to overrule her. She made Sophie feel like objecting would be career ending. And the worst part, it was hard for Sophie to reclaim her authority now. One day, Sophie overheard a conversation in the break room. "I heard Lena's been running the entire marketing strategy," someone said. "She's basically in charge now," another replied. "James just signs off on her decisions." Sophie's stomach dropped. Her work, her expertise, everything she had built had been overshadowed. At that moment, she realized Lena never asked for collaboration. She asked for control. And the story ends there. So, what does this teach us about power and manipulation? Power moves often start small. Lena didn't barge in and take over from day one. She started small, revising one project, testing boundaries, and seeing how much control she could take. She positioned herself as the direct link to upper management, making it difficult for anyone, even the director, to challenge her. She didn't directly attack Sophie or James. She used Mark's influence as leverage to get her way. This is a classic control tactic called triangulation. Unfortunately, if you give up power once, it's harder to get it back. When Sophie didn't push back on the script revisions, it signaled that Lena could keep taking more control. By the time Sophie realized what was happening, Lena had already cemented herself as the decision maker. So, how does this connect to It Ends With Us? Blake and Ryan did exactly what Lena did in this story. They made small script changes without approval. They involved an external authority figure to validate their control, and this includes Taylor Swift, allegedly. They pushed creative changes without informing the original team, which included Baldoni and Hall. And once they got their version of the script through, they kept pushing until they controlled the entire film. So I'm curious to know what you all think about this. If you've read the book and watched the movie, please drop your thoughts. I want to know how you feel about it. To be quite honest, I feel that we lost the meaning and the purpose of the book with the movie. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to Blake allegedly not reading the book. But that's a story for another time. So I'm interested to know what you all think. If this was interesting to you, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you'll know every time I drop a new video. I appreciate you so much for listening, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye, everyone.